Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Felucia. I'm a licensed psychologist, and today we will be talking about some spiritual abuse news, information basically that's been out in the media regarding church scandals, church controversy, and things like that. So I'll wait until I see a few more people. And also, if you go to my channel, you'll see some other videos that I have around this topic. And so if you are here and this is your first time here, say hi, say something in the comment section, introduce yourself, and we'll go from there. I see a few people here, which is great. I know I haven't gone live in a while, so I'm looking forward to catching up with many of you. And to all of you who are here for the first time, welcome. And so I know this is, for those of you who are here, this is a different type of live stream for me. I typically do not comment on like ongoing news sorts of things. It's not really for any particular reason. It's just, just haven't done it. And so it will be interesting to see how today's live session goes. But there have been different things that have been out in the news regarding church scandals, people who are being accused of various inappropriate things. And so my goal in having this live stream is to look at things from a slightly different perspective. I mean, of course, I want to acknowledge what people have been accused of doing, but also help you all understand how the actions that have been going on in these cases are indicative of spiritual abuse. And so I'll wait. If you are here and are new, say hi. Even if you're not new and you're returning, say hi. It would be great to do that. And so as I'm waiting for people to hop in the live and say hi, I will just go over a little bit about what my channel is and who I am in case you're here for the first time. So my name is Dr. Felucia. I'm a licensed psychologist, and I have a practice called Skill Set Counseling. And in my practice, I work a lot with individuals who have been through spiritual abuse and are either trying to recover from it, prevent it from happening again. Oh, great. Hi, I see Vivian here. It's great to see you again, Vivian. Hey, Terrell. I'm so glad to hear from you, and I hope you stay because I'd love to hear your perspective. Terrell is one who is always up on current events and knows, what's going on. So, so it's great to see both of you here. And this is, like I was saying before, this is my first time, commenting on like current events and things that are going on. But there have been a lot of just things going on in the world of mega church, Christianity, evangelicalism that don't look good. And from the perspective of what I do as a psychologist, my goal through my channel and my work is to make sure that people are aware of things like this. Oh, great, Terrell. Terrell said, I would love to hear your perspective. That's why I tuned in. Wonderful. And, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. just put that here. Whatever questions you have or news you want to bring up. If you're aware of something, then please let me know. What I'm going to start out with is I don't know if you all are familiar with Daystar Network, but there's been some things going on over there, allegedly, and I have to use this as a disclaimer. From what I've read, there's an ongoing investigation. So this is all alleged. I'm not saying this did or didn't happen or whatever. I'm just reading what I've seen out there. And I got my information from the Roy's report. And so I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the Roy's report, but they, on their website, they, provide news regarding what's going on in the church. And a lot of people will go to them because many other outlets, won't cover the information, or maybe they put their own spin on it. But from what I've read from the Roy's report, they seem pretty legit for me. It seems like the individual who runs it, Julie Roy's, she comes with the receipts. And so it's not just this person said this or whatever. They have a lot of information. Okay, I see a comment here from Vivian. It says, it's amazing how groups want to protect the accused and silence the alleged abused person. Sad and disheartening. Yes. This is something that is a classic sign with spiritual abuse. And I'm going to say this right now. I don't like the idea that when information like this comes out, people will have this stance of, oh, well, we should just pray for them and whatever. You can pray for people, and you can also call out injustice and inappropriate behavior. And so I always say on this channel that in order, people, I welcome disagreement, I welcome people with opposing opinions, but you have to be able to think in nuance. There is no room here for people just being willfully oblivious or trying to look past things. You can pray for people involved, but praying doesn't mean turning a blind eye. And what Vivian says here is very true. In these sorts of situations, a common theme that I'm seeing is that the sympathy is always for the person in power. Well, we need to protect them. We need to give them a second chance. We need to give them grace. But what about the individuals who are the victims of the abuse, right? And so that is one thing that you will see a lot in these situations. And really, for all of you who've been on my channel before and have tuned into the different things that I've talked about, I always talk about how spiritually abusive people and institutions are blatantly double standard, right? And so they have these double standards where they will have rules for themselves, for the people in authority, but everybody else is subject to other rules. So there's grace for the people that are messing up and hurting people, but then the people on the other end are expected to be perfect. Okay, I see a comment here from Terrell. This is the thing that bothers me the most. When in spiritual spaces, it always seems like there's a lot of gray. Don't talk about it, pray. This is a man and woman of God. Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And there's a lot of gray, but I would go further than that and say it's a lot of deflection and inaction, right? You can pray and do things. If we look in stories in the Bible, people were in trouble and they prayed, but they did things, right? So, and another thing that I don't like is that, yeah, this person, who did this as a so-called man and woman of God. Well, what about the person who was being hurt and being abused or treated unfairly? What are we going to do about them? And so something that you will notice a lot in spiritually abusive situations is this deflection and this idea that, that you'll know it's abusive because it's not talking about the actual issue at hand. And so you'll see this pattern of placing the needs of whoever is in power, or whoever is connected to whoever is in power above the person who's being hurt. And a lot of it too has to do with money and appearances. And so I'm going to ask you all in the comment section, have you all heard of Daystar Network before? If you have, let me know. Just say yes or no. And if you know what's going on, yes. Terrell says, yeah. Yeah, to me, Daystar feels like an updated version of like, you know, those TV. Okay, I see. Yes, I'm reading about it now since you're talking about it. Yeah, so they remind me of, I'm trying to remember the name of that network from back in like the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, like PTL or something like that. It was one of those, like, remember the rise of like the televangelist, TBN. Thank you, Vivian. TBN, yes. So to me, they are more like, yeah, Trinity Broadcasting Network, like the updated version of them. You know, they have the trope of like the televangelist. You know, the wife usually has, you know, big hair and whatnot. And there was one of, you know, the woman crying. I think the mascara was running down her face or something like that. That's kind of like the caricature we see of these networks. And in these networks, they talk a great deal about prosperity and, you know, send me your money, things like that. I mean, I'm not saying that they're all, you know, trash and they're bad, but there's been a lot of controversy around those. And so with Daystar, I'll talk about what's happening with Daystar. And for intents and purposes, as I'm talking about this, I'm lumping in Daystar with the whole mega church complex, because you see a lot of the big mega church people on these types of channels. Okay, so Daystar Network, you know, they were around. They're the founders are Joni Lamb and Marcus Lamb, who passed away, I think, in, I don't know, sometime during the pandemic. And so he passed away. But what's going on with them is that apparently, and again, this, I'm going to try and, you know, summarize this. There's a link, and I'm going to put the link in the chat so that you all can read it and let me know your thoughts. Okay. So basically, Marcus Lamb was the man who was in charge. There was scandal with him as well, too. There was a sexual something, or maybe I have to censor that. But anyway, something with him being unfaithful to his wife. And you'll find old clips of them being on Dr. Phil, him saying he was sorry and whatnot. And I don't know, there was some scandal anyway that came out about him admitting to some sort of infidelity. All right. So, and I just want to say this too, because people, you know, the thing that Terrell said in the comments about, you know, we shouldn't talk about it, we should pray. And so when he passed away, there were some people that were like, you shouldn't talk about the fact that, you know, he was unfaithful to his wife. Like, we should just forget that happened. And if you're a bad person, if you talk about it. So when you hear messages like that, that's spiritually abusive, because you can't judge somebody for speaking the truth about what happened. He admitted it. They talked about it. It happened, right? You know, David was adulterous, and that was in the Bible too. So we're not going to pretend that things are not happening when they're happening. So anyway, that's kind of a little background about them. So apparently, according to this article, his son was supposed to, I guess, take over when he died. Now, apparently, his son, Jonathan, is married to a woman named Susie, and they said that their daughter was, you know, touched inappropriately by somebody, and they're saying that this person was a family member, someone close to the family. I'm not particularly sure based on the details. This is all alleged information. Okay, so they're saying that this person did this to their daughter, who was so traumatized that she had to, like, you know, she like basically couldn't speak up about what happened. And so you'll see all this in the article. Basically, they came forward, you know, talked to their parents about it, and their parents, Marcus and Joni, basically were like, you know, you need to cover this up. We're not going to talk about it. The long story of everything is that if Jonathan didn't sign this NDA, he wasn't going to be able to take over the network, right? And there are different videos, like they themselves have talked about it, Jonathan and his wife. But I'm looking here in the article, and it says that that so I'm looking here on one of the pages. Basically, he was told if he didn't sign this NDA, he was out. And so I guess he's out now. He's not in the company anymore. I'm reading a paragraph here. It says on August 10th, 2021, the same day Jonathan and Susie met with Lenhart. I guess this Lenhart person is a licensed forensic counselor who was supposed to interview the child. Okay, so Marcus emailed his kids and their spouses, and he had this succession plan, and he said that that Jonathan was supposed to replace him as president, but he changed it and said, look, his wife is going to do it instead. And this was done allegedly because his son accused this person, Pete. That's the name they call this person. It's a synonym, not synonym. Oh my goodness, I don't remember what the word is called, but basically it's a fake name, a pseudonym. That's what I'm looking for, because he hasn't been charged. Okay, so I'm going to stop reading here, and I want to look at the comments so I don't miss anything. Okay, hi, Wendy's Worm Farm and Garden of Peace and Happiness. Looks like you're new. Welcome. There was a PTL Praise the Lord Network, AK Pass the Loot, as someone say. I love that. That is hilarious. I wish I could, I'm going to put a heart. That makes me laugh. Pass the loot. I have never heard that before, but I like that. And then Terrell says the Dallas local news reported 4 years ago that he is fired. Wow, this is horrible considering this is a Christian network. It absolutely is horrible, Terrell. I agree. And this is allegedly what Marcus said to his son. 4 hours ago, okay. There can only be one leader, Marcus wrote. Either you trust me as God's leader as you don't. And so I want to focus on that sentence right there. And can you all tell me why, what you think about that sentence? There can only be one leader, Marcus wrote. You either trust me or you don't. Marcus is the man who passed away, the old owner of the network. And he said that he told his kids that you all better stop playing judge, jury, or executioner and trust his leadership or face the consequences. Consequences including making sure that his son didn't become the successor here. So what do you feel about that particular sentiment that he expressed there? I'd like to hear from you guys about that, because I feel that's very concerning. Yes, I love that, Terrell. Spiritually manipulative. It is. It's very manipulative, because and people who are spiritually abusive and manipulative do this. They'll come up with what I call like a false dichotomy, right? So either you do what I say or you don't trust me, right? You don't respect my leadership. There really isn't a choice there, right? So he's saying, well, either trust me as God's leader or you don't. Well, can there be more than one of God's leaders? Like, what does he mean by God's leader in this case? Now, mentioning, I want to mention too that his kids are adults at this point. And so the fact that he's saying that he's leader over them and they pretty much have to do what they say or they don't trust him, that concerns me as well. I see another comment here that says it's another big business and not reflecting what church should be about, unfortunately. Yeah, I agree. A lot of the way these institutions or networks or whatever are run, it's more, and there's nothing wrong with people making money, but when the business model is one and such that, violates people's humanity and things like that and is abusive, it's not good, right? And so he also said, your mother and I built Daystar without you, and we can run it without you. That would break my heart, but there are consequences for actions and attitudes. Don't doubt my resolve. Don't question my determination. Okay. Wendy says, if someone says, trust me, it's a huge red flag. Yeah. Why do they have to preface it with trust me? Yeah. Yeah. I'd also like to hear from you, that the assumption is if you are giving to a religious organization that is being ran with integrity. Yes. And that's another thing too. Many people will fault themselves for falling prey to spiritual abuse. And I often tell people there's a reason why it's hard to detect. When you give your money to like a charity or religious organization, you are trusting that they're going to do well with that money and that they're going to do the right thing. We come into religious spaces, spiritual spaces, oftentimes with our guard down. Because think about how much you have to have your guard up all the time, right? And so you go into that place expecting to be safe, right? You don't go to a hospital expecting to get worse or to get harmed, right? And so it's the same thing with a church and a religious organization. So you go there with certain expectations and then they're violated. See another comment here. When there's no room for individual thinking and accountability, it's a dictatorship. Exactly. And that's a hallmark of these these spiritually abusive organizations, right? If you question things, then you're labeled a certain way. Okay. Hi, Young Revival 97. I think this is probably your first live. It's good to see you. I've seen you in a lot of comments. So I just found your channel after I left an abusive church. At our new church, a couple was telling us about the shepherding movement and how many people rejected it. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Young Revival. So that was something that happened in the 70s. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the shepherding movement, but there was a man named Derek Prince and some other people. I think there were like 3 other people, and this whole shepherding movement was very spiritually abusive. Derek Prince did eventually go on to apologize for his role in that, but they basically had this system and structure where you couldn't make any big decisions unless the person who was shepherding over you or who was over you or whatever approved it. So things like getting married, buying a house, moving, changing jobs, things that are your business and things that you have every right to make on your own without getting approval from church people, they said nope. And they made sure that, you had to get their approval first. And so so thank you for bringing that up, Young Revival. Oh, hi, the Sacred Artist. I think you're new. If you're here for the first time, let me know in the comments so I can welcome you. You're very welcome. Thanks for having this live. Please hit the like button. Thank you, Sacred Artist, and it's good to see you. Another name for the shepherding movement, by the way, is called the discipleship movement. And it was in a lot of charismatic churches, started in house churches. There were 5 teachers, and it started in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, right? So, yeah. So they call themselves the Fort Lauderdale 5. And there was a national, this sounds like a pyramid scheme, you guys. It says they had a national network of followers who formed pyramids of sheep and shepherds. Down the pyramid went the orders, while up the pyramid went the tithes. I'm reading here from Wikipedia about what happened. So anyway, that's what that is. Even though the shepherding movement is disbanded now, I feel like there are lots of things like that in churches that I've heard about. They won't call it that. They might call it, I don't know, discipleship, mentorship, or whatever. And again, those things in and of themselves aren't bad, but you need to make sure that you have complete autonomy and nobody has the right to dictate your life. Okay, I see another comment. I believe the group I was with probably embarrassed the shepherding movement. Oh boy, everything you said sounds like what I was in. Thanks, Terrell. Says there are 9 people watching. Let's hit that like button. Yes, please do. If you're watching this and you feel like this is helpful to you, please like it. I appreciate that. It will help get the word out. Accountability is a new wording. Yes, and I have a video on this. It's really unfortunate that with spiritual abuse, even the most, I would say, like neutral of terms or things can really be perverted and twisted. And so accountability, mentorship, when people talk to me about their experiences with these things, many times there's been a lot of control and it's very subtle and it will creep up on you. Terrell says, I was definitely in a ministry that was very much like the shepherding movement. Wow. I want to hear from you. It seems like a lot of you have. I'm going to put here in the comments, so let me know. I'm going to say put a 1 in the chat if you were in anything like a shepherding movement. But yeah, a lot of us have been in something like that. I know, I was, and one thing, if you have college students are particularly susceptible to this. So if any of you are watching who are in college, have children or family in college, please talk to them about this, because we're seeing, there are a lot of these college campus ministries are, there have been some scandals coming out with them. There's one, I think it was either, gosh, I don't remember the name of it, but I'm seeing ones in the chat. So thank you for letting me know. The campus, I think it was it Campus Crusade? I don't know which one it was, but I'm trying to look it up here. That some of these have been very abusive. And, people have talked about their really bad experiences with some of these things like Campus Crusade. There was one called YWAM, I think Youth with a Mission or something like that. And they might have had some abuse or something going on. Yeah, it was YWAM. There was spiritual abuse in YWAM, Youth with a Mission. So really be careful. We talked about this in some of my other lives before, about how spiritually abusive institutions prey on people in their weaknesses and vulnerabilities. And these individuals, they exhibit grooming and predatory like behavior. So they're going to know where you're vulnerable. College students, think about it. This is the first time they're away from home. They're still forming new ideas and opinions and perspectives on the world. And so that is, unfortunately, they can be really prime targets for this. So for those of you who have just joined, hi, if you're new, welcome. I'm talking about the Daystar scandal, and I'll put the link to the report that I'm reading from in the chat again, in case you haven't seen it. I think that is a wonderful thought about college students. Yeah, it's really the kinds of things that are going on that I've heard are just really very sad. And so if you know of anybody, just ask them, what's going on. They're putting sometimes financial pressure on these students, really making them feel just really targeting them with their vulnerabilities. And there's just a lot going on. So anyway, I was reading here about what Marcus supposedly said in this email, and basically he's telling them, don't doubt me. There's only one leader. He said, I built Daystar without you, and we can run it without you. And that is also a spiritually abusive message, things that I've heard. You guys have also talked about before, basically that, we don't need you, you're replaceable and whatnot. And it's said in a very condescending manner. Yeah, okay. Full transparency. I'm preparing for my daily show and had no idea about Daystar. I'm going to run the story. Cool. And let me know when you do, Terrell, because I'd love, if I'm available, then I'll visit your live too. Yes, leaders will make you feel worthless no matter how much you have poured into that ministry. That is very true. And they have, they have a horrible way of doing it too. It's very condescending. And they do it in such a way that they make it seem, on one hand, they obviously need you, right? They need your money, they need your time, but then they make you feel like you're just a peon, you're a commodity. We'll do this without you. We don't need you. And the way they do it is just really awful. Some of you have talked about how you've been talked about from behind the pulpit. And that's another way they'll do that. They won't necessarily use your name, but they'll use enough details to make sure that, that they know that they're talking about you. Okay, this is a really great comment here. I'm learning how now you can't even have deep spirituality and healthy thinking without autonomy, and how important that is. Yes, that's very important. It's very important. Your autonomy and your humanity. I have a video that talks about how spiritually abusive people and institutions do that. In fact, Terrell has a video about that, basically about like, and I don't know, Terrell, you have to remind me of which one it was, where you talk about basically that, if you, in order for you to follow somebody spiritually, they have to acknowledge their own humanity and yours. And spiritual abuse is very dehumanizing. It is the way people will treat you and talk about you, whatever, human reaction you have to something, you're shamed for it. Right. And so, as I'm reading this article here, this Marcus is telling them that, that he can go on and build this Daystar network without them, and basically just did kind of demanding like this us versus them mentality. You're either for me or against me, right? And yeah, oh great, the Sacred Artist says this channel and safe space with Terrell have helped me so much. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. And so, the so anyway, I see here in this article, it says on August 25th, 2021, Jonathan said Marcus summoned him and JW into Marcus's office. Marcus then told them that Leonard, who's the counselor, had investigated the allegations against Pete and determined that Pete had not molested Jonathan and Susie's daughter. He added that Marcus warned Jonathan and JW that if either of them continued to believe that Pete was I'm going to say the word PDF file. I hope you know what I mean by that, because I don't want YouTube to strike this video, but they need to find another job. So he said, look, this counselor determined this man didn't do it. And if you believe otherwise, you can find another job. Yeah, we're going to tag team soon, Terrell. That's right. It's been a busy season, but we definitely will. That's great that our channels have helped you, Sacred Artist. So Jonathan said that after that meeting, he felt like he had no choice but to submit to Marcus's directive. 3 months later, Marcus died unexpectedly, and Jonathan spent the next year sorting through his mother's financial affairs and taking care of her. Meanwhile, Susie, the wife, said that she became depressed, just like a zombie operating somehow. Thank you, Sacred Artist and Terrell, for your support. Yeah, if you're here and you are enjoying this, please hit the like button. Also, if you're new, please introduce yourself. So if you notice here, it says in this article that Jonathan felt that he had no choice. And this is why, when I talk with people about preventing spiritual abuse, always be careful when you are financially linked to any kind of spiritual institution. I'm not saying you should never do it, but if you see the situation that he's in, and this is how individuals who are in spiritually abusive situations take a while to leave. One thing that makes me feel sad sometimes is when people say, well, why didn't you just leave, right? It's kind of the same thing with people who are in abusive relationships. They might hear something like, why didn't you just leave right away? And when you are in a situation, when you are financially linked to an institution, this person, Jonathan, had financial and, family links to this place, because he was told, hey, if you don't like it, and if you continue to bring up the fact that your daughter was harmed by somebody, even though we're saying that she wasn't, or this person didn't do it. If you don't let this thing go, you're out. And so think about it. He has a family relationship that he has to consider, and finances. And many of you that have talked about your not financial, but spiritual abuse situations have talked about how that institution, somehow you were like financially dependent on them. Maybe you worked for them or something, and they kind of got you early in life, right? So this is pretty much all you know in terms of work. And so think about being in that situation and really having to weigh your options before you go somewhere else, or thinking, what can I do? What kind of work can I get? Okay, I see a comment here. During leader meetings, the pastor would basically say, some of us, me, did a bad job caring for people, but everyone in my group were loved and they were growing, but not the way the pastor wanted. Wow. That's interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Like, I'm wondering what exactly the pastor was after, because it sounds like you're saying that everyone in your group felt fine, but they wanted you to do more things. I wonder what that was. Um, and then I see another comment. It takes a battered individual at least 15 times to leave. Wow. Yeah. It takes a lot longer than people expect. And so, thank you, for y'all for sharing your stories. But think about it this way, just like an individual who's in an abusive relationship, they may have, they have family ties with this person. Maybe they share, a child, or maybe one person is financially dependent on the other. So it's very difficult for people to sometimes just up and leave. And so, I can understand in this situation why his son said that he felt trapped. He said he felt like he had no choice. And so let me see here as I continue to read this. So I guess the person here who was accused of being, of harming this child was, I guess, sat for a polygraph examination, right? And so they were saying he was found to be truthful in the polygraph examination. And here's the kind of interesting part about this, that in the article is saying that Jonathan's mom's new husband, because she is married to a new man now named Doug Weiss, he owns a polygraph company. Okay. So Jonathan, the son, is saying he thinks that the findings could have been manipulated because of, his mom's new husband's polygraph knowledge. And then also, according to lawinfo.com, lie detector tests have questionable reliability and generally not admissible as evidence in court. Terrell says, whoa, this is like a TV drama. Yes, messy indeed. I'm looking at this like, oh my goodness, but, then they're asking if, Jonathan Daystar's, or the Roy's report asked Daystar if Doug Weiss, who's Joni's new husband, administered the test himself, and they wanted documentation of the findings, but Daystar did not respond to the request. So who knows? But it says here, okay, I'm going to read this comment. The pastor was never direct, but basically just wanted updates on everyone constantly. See, I don't like that. Something about that doesn't sit right with me, because what do they want these updates for? Like, why is he asking you if he wants updates? I mean, I understand, a pastor can't check on all these people, but wanting constant updates on people to me feels like micromanaging and too controlling. I don't like that. So, if you want an update, just ask the person. What if they feel comfortable sharing with you as the leader, but not the pastor? That's also too, we have to respect people's privacy. So I see a comment here. I love this work you're offering. I've been in therapy for years, healing from church hurt as a child, but this hits the exact button on my path in this journey. Thank you. Well, thank you for watching. The same thing happened with Ty Tribbett and Kirk Franklin. Oh my, that was a mess years ago. Deflection and Just Pray for Them. Yes. Did you guys ever watch that show? It was on years ago. Something about like the pastors of Atlanta or something like that. It was just, I think maybe it was from that. I don't remember, but I just remember there was something with some pastor's reality show, and there was all kinds of scandals going on there too. And I heard a lot of that, just pray for them. And it's like, well, can we just address the elephant in the room here? Okay, Terrell, this has been a great, wonderful show. Thank you for your dual chat. So yes, it's good to see you, Terrell. Thank you always for stopping by. Okay, so no, okay, I see a no to that question. So if you have seen any of these pastor reality shows, it was on years ago, but I do remember hearing similar sentiments about, well, we should just pray for them, right? And you can pray for them and also call out that, yeah, this is not right behavior. Because think about it, in this situation, a child allegedly was harmed, and they're saying, no, we need to keep this covered up because I said so, right? Because the person in charge, who is the God appointed leader, right? Notice one leader, he says, I'm the God appointed leader, so you have to do what I say, and we're going to cover this up. And that's just, that's not right. Okay, see another comment here. If someone missed church, we were to basically make them come, manipulate. It never sat well with me. I never did that, so we always had it on me. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I know what you're talking about. If people, and this is something that I've talked about as well too on my channel, is that spiritually abusive institutions and people are very entitled. They are entitled to your time. They believe that they are entitled to your time and your resources. When I talk about resources, I mean a lot of times money. But if someone didn't show up, now, I mean, I understand, okay, let's make sure this person's okay. We haven't heard from them in several weeks. I'm sure people appreciate being checked in on, but there's a difference between checking in on someone to make sure they're okay and feeling like you're spying on them and wanting to know their whereabouts. You don't owe your whereabouts to anybody, right? I mean, it's one thing if you are accountable to a job and they pay you, but they're not paying you at church to be there. So that bothers me. And I don't like that. People should have, one way that you'll know a spiritual institution is healthy is that if they not just say this, but show it by their actions, that people are free to leave and come as they choose. They don't feel entitled to your presence there. And that's probably going to be difficult for some people to hear, but it's true. You can't control people, and you can't make people show up to a place that they don't want to show up to. And so people in these institutions are just going to have to accept that there are going to be people that want to come, and there are going to be people that want to come for some time and leave, and they may come back and they may not. And acting entitled to know where they are and demanding that people show up is spiritual abuse. You can't use your authority to command people's whereabouts like that. So thank you all for sharing your comments here. And it's also unfair to you too as a leader, because it's putting pressure on you to do things that it seems like you don't feel comfortable with. You're not responsible for people's whereabouts. Okay, I see a comment here. The church I went to as a child, most of the members lived next door to the church and the houses the pastor owned. Oh my goodness, he would pop up in the houses and saying that God told him to come over and talk, and they would lock the door if you were late. Oh my goodness. Wow. I don't like that at all. And I think even like landlords can't do that. I think they have to give you notice, or they can only come in if there's an emergency or something, and they would lock the door if you were late. Wow. So are they locking the door to the person's house, or I don't understand. It sounds like maybe is the person being locked out of their own home because the pastor owns it? Something, maybe that's what you're saying. Okay, I see another comment here. If you miss church, they would lock the doors of the church if you were late. Wow. Oh my goodness. I don't like that. And see, that goes to like kind of what we talked about with the shaming, public shaming and things like that. Terrell says, I'm supposed to be gone, but my pastor dictated where we all stayed, and that is the way he controlled members. If we left the church, we had nowhere to stay, and we knew it. Oh, I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. And so you see how that's spiritually abusive and controlling, because there's strings attached. And I tell people, anytime you go to these institutions, always be careful accepting things from them. I'm not saying that you should not do it, but abusive institutions give you things with strings attached. So yeah, Terrell, in your case, they're not, where people are going to feel like they have to go because they're their shelter is dependent on their church attendance. Wow. I see another comment here. If you miss church to cook for the holidays, man, they would actually hold services longer. Now I know better. Oh boy. I wonder how long were those services? It sounds like it was pretty long. And then someone says separate stories, same church. Yeah. So, things like this are, it's really, it's concerning to see that. And when you have people, when you have somebody, saying this is where you can, dictating important aspects of your life, like where you live and your money and things like that, it's a red flag. It's something to be careful about. And so let me see more about this story here. They basically, took their daughter to a counselor 2 years later, and then they sort of reported the suspected abuse to Texas Child Protective Services. And then the CPS reported the abuse to the Colleyville police, who have since reactivated their investigation. And so, something else that is a red flag for these environments is when they want to keep like other institutions out of things, right? And so there was an incident with one church where the woman had mentioned that her husband was abusing their children, and they said that don't go to the police, right? We'll handle it in house. Be very wary of this. We'll handle things in house. And people will sometimes, quote Bible verses about that and say, well, you shouldn't take things to the world and you should keep it all within the church. And that is just manipulation, right? The church has its resources, but there are also things the church can't do. The church can't litigate, the church can't enforce law. And so anytime you're in a situation and you're hearing a lot of that, be careful. So they have a Bible verse for everything. They do, don't they? They do. And they will take those verses and twist them to their benefit. And so it's something to watch out for and be really careful about. From this article, it looks like 2023 was when this harm to the child was reported. But I'm looking here to figure out when the allegations came out, and I'm thinking it was around 2021, 2020, 2021. So this is a matter of years before law enforcement was informed about this. And this is common in spiritually abusive institutions. They will have their own person they want you to talk to. So even if it's like, okay, we want to talk to a counselor, well, they have their own person that they want you to talk to. They very much frown on anybody getting any kind of outside help or intervention. One of these individuals had said something about how you shouldn't go to, he told women who were being abused that they shouldn't go to domestic shelters, like the shelters for abused women, because he said they were run by feminists and the government that wanted to break up people's marriages. So, and he's on, there's a video of him saying this. And so imagine being a woman who is being abused, woman or man, right? Doesn't matter. You're being abused, you're in physical danger, and you're being told that you shouldn't go to people that can give you help. That's spiritual abuse, because that person is using spirituality to put you in a position where you can be harmed further. And this whole story reeks of spiritual abuse. And the reason I say that is because while these individuals may not have harmed this child, they are delaying justice by say, you can't talk about this, or, you have to do what we say, and using spirituality to manipulate things and saying, well, you have to do what we tell you because of whatever. And so There are other situations that have happened, not just here at Daystar, but there are other pastors that have resigned for some, inappropriate behavior and whatnot. So it's very concerning. Okay, I see another comment here. I think I had a light bulb moment when my church said that they're not a cult, but they do the same thing a cult does and justifies using the Bible out of context to justify it. That's not right. Wow. Yeah. That seems to me very gaslighting, right? They'll say, "Oh, we're not this," so it's kind of to prime you to think, okay, well, to rule out them being a cult in their mind. Well, what is a cult? How are they defining what a cult is? Are they saying they're not a cult because they said they're not a cult? Because in a lot of these, I read something somewhere, and the individual who wrote this blog post said, if you are putting your church in a Google search engine to see whether they're a cult, that's probably a red flag for you to think about leaving. Because it is, it's the duck test, right? If it walks like a duck and it, quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. And it's the same thing with these cult things. A lot of times we think about cults like, Jim Jones and all these like doomsday cults that make the news, but there are several other institutions and places that function a lot like them. See this here. Someone told me that 12-step meetings were a place for gossips. And see, this is another spiritually abusive tactic. And saying things that talking about what is going on is gossip, right? So let's say something happened in your spiritual institution, whether it's a church or wherever you are, and you are talking about what happened. This thing happened today. You'll be accused of gossip. If you are talking about what happened, you're labeled as a gossip. And so what ends up happening is that people feel that they can't say anything because they don't want to be accused of gossip. And so I'm going to look up here what the dictionary definition is of gossip. Okay. And gossip is casual or unconstrained conversation or reports about other people, typically involving details that are not confirmed as being true. And so that's the sticking point here, not confirmed as being true, right? And so when you are talking about something that you saw, news or whatever, that's not gossip. You're talking about what you saw. However, in these institutions, they'll tell you, well, that's gossip. Okay. I see here that they say they're not cults because they worship God, not the devil, but they have all the same issues cults do. Yeah. The worshiping God, okay, but are you controlling people's lives or trying to control them? And all the things that you all have talked about are very much doing that. I mean, it's not right. Think about it in this case, if it's not a cult, how easy is it for people to leave? If you decided one day you were going to up and leave, would you feel comfortable doing that? Could you feel like, hey, I'm out and that's it? Or would you worry about the questions you would have to answer and the phone calls and the texts you would have to manage, or maybe someone showing up at your door or something happening to your finances? Talia Small, hi. So what about the child's grandmother who wanted to talk to her alone without her parents afterward the child shut down? Yeah, I read about that in the article. And they were saying that, hey, New Biology, good to see you. It's good to see some returning people here. Yeah, the fact that the child shut down, to me, I think is very concerning. And it talked about that in the article as well. And why did they want to isolate her from her parents too? I don't understand that either, right? But do you see that, when I've talked about these types of institutions, it's always about appearance, and they value appearance over authenticity. And so they don't want the news to get out. They put what was looking, basically how they appeared, above the safety of a member of their family. And another thing that is a red flag is this: don't doubt my resolve, don't question my determination. Spiritual. This is what Marcus Lamb supposedly said in his email to his kids about this whole thing. And when someone tells you, don't question my authority, don't question me, does that sound healthy to you? And it doesn't sound healthy to me at all, right? Even, Jesus in the Bible, he didn't tell people not to doubt him or question him. If you remember the story of Thomas, who, doubted, he said, put your hands like my nail scars and things like that. He didn't say, don't question me or don't doubt me, right? Jesus gave more people freedom and authority than some of these cults do, right? If you think about in the Bible where there were a bunch of like disciples, I think in one part that left Jesus, they said that they were leaving. He said he said something about eating his flesh and drinking his blood. He said, if you don't do this, you don't have a part in my kingdom. And it said many people turned their back on him. And he asked Peter and the people that left, are you going to leave? He didn't say you guys better stay. He didn't threaten the people that left. So think about it. This is Jesus' example, but yet these pastors, I'm not saying all pastors do this, obviously, but the spiritually abusive ones that are threatening people as they leave, that's abuse. And you have talked about that. Many of you have talked about that with your, in your stories that you've shared. People, have been threatened. They've been told, if you leave, you're not going to succeed. Making people feel scared, that's abusive. I'm going to ask you all in the chat if that's happened. Have you ever been told not to question authority or threatened if you leave? So I would like to hear from you, from you all in the comments if you've experienced that. And so, anyway, it's interesting as I'm reading this, it just, I've read some other updates. I think that the couple themselves, Jonathan and his wife, Susie, are like in hiding. I saw a video from them where they said they were like in an undisclosed location because they had been followed. Can you imagine these people are feeling unsafe and had to go somewhere else because they didn't feel safe? It's just, and their child was allegedly harmed. It's just really unfortunate. Okay, I see another comment here. I was told I would die alone and be just like my parents, which I were told were horrible people, and I was with them to break that spirit off of me. I'm so sorry you were told that. That's awful. And again, it's that fear-based control. So if you don't do what we say, all these bad things are going to happen to you in the future. Another comment, I think it's more churches that behave in an abusive manner versus not. Yes, your question of being threatened. My mom told me that I was going to hell for leaving the church to go live with my dad. Wow. I'm sorry that you went through that. A lot of people have expressed similar sentiments that they've been threatened in some way. And notice that when I say threatened, it doesn't have to be a direct threat, like, oh, we're going to come get you if you leave. Many of these places don't even have to physically scare people out of leaving. They'll just say, well, nothing's going to go right with you. Or they'll say things like, you'll be back. Or they'll say something along the lines of that whatever you do from that point won't ever be successful because you left them. It's very similar to an abusive dynamic. When people have been with abusive partners, the partner will often make them feel like they can't do any better. So it's like, fine, leave, but you'll be back. You won't find anybody that will put up with you for long. And so there are lots of similarities. See another comment here. They told me that I shouldn't leave and God would no longer bless me. Yeah. And another way they do this too is they will tell stories of people that left. And I ask myself, how do I even know if the story about this person is true? Because that person isn't even there to speak up. So they'll be like, oh, well, this person left and, they left and now they're broke and their family's a mess. And, And and all they have to do is come back and say they're sorry. So they'll tell these stories about bad things that have happened to people that left. And how do we know these stories are even true? And even if that story is true, how do we know that's because of them leaving that institution? I see a comment here. LOL. So they're gossiping about old members, hypocrites. Yeah, that to me is more gossipy than anything, right? So I just you really have to be careful. Okay, I see a comment here. Thank you for the live. We are doing much better now, and the videos help. I'll come back later and watch the live. Well, thank you for your time here and for your comments. I appreciate it. Yeah, but this is really a very concerning thing for me to see. And it's not just Daystar. There are pastors that have resigned due to misconduct, being inappropriate. You know the word I'm referring to, but I don't want YouTube to take this down. But you know what I mean by them doing inappropriate things. So there's that. I see another comment here. I was in an abusive marriage as well. Mother-in-law is a minister with her own church. She was abusive toward her grandchildren. This story hits home. I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm really sorry, and I hope that things are better for the grandkids and for you. It's really awful because a lot of times people who are going through spiritual abuse, there's many times another type of abuse going on. It could be abuse from a partner, from a spouse, or from family members. With some of these mega churches and networks, they are kind of like family dynasties, right? And so it's kind of like you have this family system too that you're up against, as well as a spiritual/religious system. And so people are having to fight, the religion as well as their own family. And if it's really unfortunate if there's other, abuse going on there too, because it makes it harder to leave. Now this person doesn't have a family, either spiritual or physical. And it's really unfortunate. Like it hurts my heart to hear about children being harmed, and things aren't being done about it. So hi Kathleen, good to see you. I see a thank you from you. You're very welcome. Oh good, I'm glad that you got outside help. I see a comment here, things are much better and we got outside help. I'm glad that worked out. But the way these institutions are, they really try to scare you into getting outside help, right? Now we have a family of choice. That's good. That's the great thing about adulthood, is that you also get to choose your families. And many of these institutions, they can act just like, abusive families of origin, telling you that you won't do anything better without them. They really operate a lot based on this like scarcity mindset of there isn't much out there for you. Oh, okay. I see a comment here. You reading a book and they're calling it system betrayal in many cases also. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that is really what spiritual abuse is. It's betrayal by a whole system, because this is a system that you expect to support you, to provide solace, refuge, support, things like that, and you're betrayed. See another comment. For me, that's what's hard about thinking of the church as a family. So everyone has to work for the family. That family dynamic gets on my nerves. Yeah, people define family in a lot of ways. And when it comes to abusive institutions, they really want to treat people like children within that family. And I wouldn't say children, I would say even mistreated children, abused children, because in a family, people still get to have relative autonomy. And you, as an adult in a spiritual system, you absolutely have every right to autonomy. And sometimes when I talk about this and I talk about how these systems that are abusive, believe they're entitled to your time and resources, sometimes people have misinterpreted that as me saying you shouldn't give of your time and resources. And that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying it's your choice as to what you want to give, how you want to give, when you want to give, because you're a human being and no other human being has a right to control you ever. These abusive institutions, however, don't believe that. And so they believe, and they will use spirituality to drive this point home. They will twist scriptures and other spiritual beliefs and things like that to make it seem as if they are entitled to your time and resources. So being part of this family means you have to do everything we say. We are entitled to your time, your money, your emotional resources, and things like that. Now, of course, they're not going to come out and say that, but the way they communicate that is through their actions. You know, some of you have talked about your whereabouts and how your whereabouts had been monitored, or you had to say why you didn't show up, you know, to something. And, it's one thing to ask out of curiosity, but demanding that you have to account for your whereabouts, no, I don't agree with that. And it's up to you if you want to talk about it, but if you don't want to talk about where you were, I mean, it's, and I understand, okay, if you had to do something, you were supposed to show up and you didn't, then yeah, okay. But keeping such close tabs on people at all times is a huge red flag. And so I understand why people say they don't like hearing things like, oh, we're a big family here, we're all one family. And in abusive places, that's used to groom people, because that's meant to help make you, number one, let your guard down, and then number two, relate out of a sense of obligation, right? And so, I talked before about how you have things, but there's strings attached. And so whatever you were given comes from that abusive institution return. So you really need, and so this, in that article, and it's really concerning to me. There's, the just the things that are going on with Daystar. There are some other things as well, but the one that I'm looking at is specifically this individual who harmed Marcus and Joni, or allegedly harmed Marcus and Joni Lamb's granddaughter, and how her granddaughter's parents, Marcus and Joni's son and his wife, in their attempts to get justice for their daughter, were now told to sign an NDA or leave, and just being treated horribly because of this. And you're welcome. I see a thank you comment. You're very welcome. And when we see things like this, think about how much money organizations like this have. Think about what their message is, to people. I myself don't, watch Daystar, but from what I've seen thus far, there are things that really, they concern me. And if you read the article, you'll see that it's really concerning, because this individual that I'm talking about, who was supposedly harmed, here directly from the article, and I have to here again, YouTube, it says, to my horror, so this is John about his daughter. It says, to my horror, when I got up there, my daughter was completely disrobed, and he, the alleged perpetrator, Pete, was in the room. Okay. And they said that basically this Pete, one of their male relatives, had followed the daughter, who was 5 years old at the time in 2021, followed her upstairs as she was going to change to go swimming. And so Jonathan said, "What are you doing?" screaming at the top of his lungs. And then this Pete person said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He apologized 50 times, like somebody caught red-handed, right? So they, from what they're saying, if this is true, they caught this person like, think about how awful that is. And then the family, his parents were reportedly defending this man, and saying that, we did our investigation, he didn't do it, stop talking about it. So that happened in 2021, but apparently they're thinking, from what I can read in the article, something had happened beforehand because of what the daughter had said, because she said that, somebody had interacted with her in an inappropriate manner. And so, as you are all hearing this, what comes to mind for you? Have you, and I know that it's not like easy to talk about, but if you have any experiences that you would like to share that you feel could go along with this, let me know. If you look at Jonathan and Susie Lamb, they have a channel and they talked about everything on this channel. And from what I saw last, they said that they were in an undisclosed location because of this. Okay, so it really, it's a sad situation, and this is it makes me sad how things like this happen. And when people speak out about it, they'll say, well, don't say bad things about the church and don't say bad things about God's people. I have been reprimanded, so to speak, for something like that. And I remember that, this person said that, and I did a video about it too. Do I hate the church because I talk about spiritual abuse? But their argument was, well, there are a lot of good pastors and a lot of good churches out there. And so, when you talk about this stuff, you make everybody feel on edge. And my response to that is that, well, if you're doing the right thing, why would you feel on edge about it, right? Every institution that we have out there, they're going to have people that are doing the things they need to do and are following the rules. And then there are going to be people that aren't. And if and I believe it's everyone's responsibility to call the truth out when you see it, And so, of course, there are people that have an axe to grind with everything. And, I can't do anything about that. But the point is, I want people to feel that it is, I don't want people to feel like ashamed or guilty because they're seeing things that don't add up. That's one thing about spiritually abusive environments, is that they really attack people for critical thinking. And I talk a lot about gaslighting on this channel, and the whole purpose of that gaslighting is to basically make people doubt what they're seeing right in front of them. And so when we see these comments like, well, just pray for them, or they're a godly person, that's not addressing the hurtful or inconsistent or abusive or harmful behavior. Okay, so I put the article in the chat. I'm trying to think if there's any other news that we want to talk about. So let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about, that you heard about, that you have questions about, or just any other things that you wanted to talk about. And I might do more of these. This is the first time I've done anything like this, and I just wanted to, I felt like it was something that was important enough not to be ignored. But I might do more of these and just kind of like do an analysis of the case or the story so that we can understand how these things work and what are some of the red flags that we see. I see a lot of red flags in the article, and what really kind of concerned me was this rush to cover up things. When we put appearances over the welfare of people in an institution, that's abusive. And look, I get it. Everybody wants to make sure that they, to some degree, that they come across okay, right? Nobody wants, we all like our privacy, and it's understandable that people want to make sure that their image is good. But if you're doing that at the expense of the people that you're claiming to protect, that you're put in charge of to protect, then that's wrong. Okay, great. Please do. Thanks so much. Julie Roy's reports are so good. They are. I like how she has the receipts on things. And it's interesting because people have criticized her too for doing what she does, which is, it just shows how pervasive this abusive mindset can be within some spaces, especially evangelical spaces. That's probably something else I'll talk about, but there are, and I'm not saying it's just evangelicals, there's no particular spiritual system that is immune to spiritual abuse, but recently some of the things that I've been seeing coming out about evangelical systems are disheartening, they're concerning, and I believe that there's some things inherent to the structures of some of those institutions that make abuse more likely, especially the focus so much on like personality. I did a video about the cult of personality, but this emphasis on like charisma and gosh, just leading more with personality than character. I mean, there are some people that have big personalities, or people that have charming personalities, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when that's the focus, when that's what you're leading with, then it's really easy for character to be compromised. So, yeah, I mean, if you just look here at the Roy's report, there's a lot here, so gosh, it's just there's a lot. And and also something else I would like for you to take away from this is that when we think about spiritual abuse, when we think about abusive institutions, we tend to focus on those institutions doing direct harm. So whether it is abusing people financially, causing them, harm from a bodily standpoint or whatever. But it's more than that. So some of these institutions, they may not directly cause harm, but the fact that they are using their resources to cover things up, that is just as abusive, right? Think about, maybe a movie or a book, maybe that you've read or watched about somebody married to a wealthy and influential person, and they're trying to get out of that abusive relationship. But that abusive person has everybody on the take, like the police department. They have friends who are judges. So basically, this individual is up against an entire system, and so they can't leave. There's actually a book that I read that had a story like that in the book. So anyway, my point is that is how it is for a lot of people who are trying to escape spiritually abusive systems. It is them versus people like a whole institution that has many more resources, financial and otherwise, behind them. And so that's why it's sometimes not as easy as, we'll just leave. Okay. So yeah, so I really appreciate the engagement here. Anybody have any other questions or comments? Or even any ideas you would want to discuss the next time I go live. And I'll probably put a post up for that as well. But, these are things to be careful about. And I know that it probably can be, I would say probably triggering, upsetting, evoking a lot of emotions for people who have been through this. Some of you have talked about this in the comments, how your story had some similarities to what you have read about and what I've talked about regarding allegedly what happened at Daystar. So my heart goes out to you, and, take the time you need today to make sure you care for yourself after this. Okay, I see a comment here. Smear campaigns are very harmful as well. Yes, they are. And those institutions have used their resources at times to smear people, right? They might do it directly. They might do so from, maybe an indirect means. People have talked about how this happens oftentimes on social media where people will send like veiled messages, or they might say something and that person knows that they're the ones being talked about. So yeah, smear campaigns are definitely very harmful. And you can think about how intimidating it must be to be on the other end of that and, have to worry about what's going to happen to you. Hi, blessed one. Glad you caught the live too. It's good to see you. For those of you who just dropped by, we're talking about what happened at Daystar Network and the allegations of abuse cover-up. And basically, I just went through the article. I'll post it here again, where it shows that, shows what happened. And I also have the video. I'm trying to see if I can find the video here, by Jonathan and Susie that talks about, it's a short video, but it talks about what they're going through right now. So I'm going to paste their video so you can hear directly from them about what happened. But yeah, basically, for those of you who are new, so Daystar Network is kind of like a modern version of the, TBN, PTL. I laugh because someone said PTL. They said it, instead of praise the Lord, it means pass the loot. And that made me laugh. But anyway, the founders, their granddaughter was apparently abused by somebody in the family. And so the parents, the dad of the granddaughter, is the son of Marcus and Joni, I don't know how many sons they have, but he's a son anyway. And so as he's trying to come forward about this and, figure out what's going on, they're like, if you don't sign this NDA, you're out. I guess he didn't sign it, but basically he's out, and he feels targeted, and the last video that I saw here, it looks like they're in an undisclosed location saying that they don't feel safe. And this is a Christian network, right? And so there's, in the video, for those of you who caught the latter end of this, I just talked about how some of the communication is suggestive of spiritual abuse. The individual who died, his name is Marcus Lamb. He sent this email to his kids, basically telling them to get in line behind his authority. Now, mind you, these are his adult children, but he said he built the network without them or with them, and he can build it without them. And, and they had to stop accusing this person who was caught in a compromising position with their daughter. So, yeah, someone says, I used to watch them. So sad. Yeah. Like we said, when we tune into these networks and, associate with these institutions, we are not expecting to be lied to or manipulated or anything like that. And the purpose of this, you're always going to hear people. One thing that really frustrates me is that when news like this comes out, you'll see somebody, in the comments saying, we should just pray for this person, and you don't know the whole story. You're right, I don't know the whole story, but from what I see, it doesn't look good. And it's important to speak out about things and educate people, and so you can pray for the person, but what about the person who was allegedly abused? You pray for them too. So I pray for his kids, stand up for the children, not the church. Yeah, exactly. Abusive messages always are skewed toward support of the person in power, right? Pray for this person. What about the person who, was harmed in this case? Or, it's really frustrating to hear that. So I tell people that when you hear things like that, I always say, ask about the other person. You can pray and do multiple things where you can multitask. You can pray and you can seek justice. You can pray and you can expose them, stop church abuse. If you don't talk about these things, how are people going to know and protect themselves? One thing that I really like about this channel is how you all support one another and share information with one another, because people will say, wow, I didn't know that, or I didn't think about this way, or maybe someone does have an experience, but they feel very alone and they don't feel validated or heard. And so when people share their experiences, and there's strength in community and there's strength in supporting one another. And so you can hear things, and because one thing about spiritual abuse is it's very isolating, and people who are abusing their power are making sure that they um okay. Hi, Dele. And Dele, I want to thank you because I got your super chat a couple months ago. Very generous. Thank you so much. I tried to like respond to you or something in the comments, and I couldn't do that. But thank you so much, Dele. Um, so Dele is a fellow Nigerian like me, so I really appreciate your support. And that really meant a lot. I think that was the first super chat I got on my channel. My channel is relatively new and it's growing, so I really, really appreciate your support. So thank you, Dele. And I see here, let me read your comment. Hey, there are a slew of Nigerian YouTubers like The Real Talk by Auntie Aduni and Daddy Freeze that speak about spiritual abuse or foreign perspectives needed within the community. Thank you, Dele. I really appreciate that. Yes, and especially within Nigerian churches, there is, the things that I read about what's going on, in the churches, and there was a live before that we did where we talked about culture. And while I don't believe that there is anything inherently like wrong or abusive about any cultures, there are some cultural factors that make spiritual abuse more likely, right? And so when you think about, when you think about things like, these churches, right, and things that you talked about daily within the Nigerian community, it's important because there are cultural factors. Like for those of you, I'd love to hear from you, in the comments, if you are from, if you like, my ethnicity is Nigerian. I have parents who immigrated here, in those types of households. Maybe if you have immigrant parents or you're an immigrant yourself, some of the culture will kind of look down on questioning authority. Now, I know every culture is different, and everyone within cultures are different, but with some of these cultures, the good side of it is, yes, we respect our elders, and yes, there's respect for authority, and that's good. But on the flip side of that can be, don't question my authority. And so when you have things within an inherent within a culture or a setting that say, questioning is bad, questioning is disrespect, whatever, then things like abuse, especially spiritual abuse, can either be more likely to occur, or people might be more hesitant to speak out about it. Okay, so it's important to note that and to take account of that. And so to any of you, maybe put a 1 in the chat if you grew up, either, maybe outside the United States, or you have immigrant parents or things like that. And just what was that experience like for you? Okay, hey, I see a comment here. Didn't know you were Nigerian beautiful. The African American culture the same. Yes, yeah. And again, this is not, I think, our cultures are amazing, right? I love American culture. I love Nigerian culture, identify with things in both, but there are some things within the cultures that can make it difficult, right? And even within American culture, think about how independence is, highly esteemed, right? And I don't have to answer to anybody. And that maverick spirit, it's good, right? But then you think about some of these churches out here that have gone wild, these mega churches and all the nonsense going on within some of them. And that is also linked to this idea of independence. I don't have to answer to anybody. I'm in it just for me, right? So whatever culture you're a part of, there are going to be some aspects of it that lend themselves to spiritual abuse. Yes, they protect the pastor no matter what. Absolutely. People have talked about how So I've heard several stories like this where people feel angry that the pastor can just come into the home and do whatever. Like the pastor has such a revered position that even within your own home, this pastor can come in and tell people what to do, and they're treated better than like other people within the home. Thank you. Dele is so generous. Thank you so much for the super chat, Dele. Dele just sent me a super chat for $20. Thank you so much. You're very generous. I really appreciate how all of you are so kind and so generous on this channel. Thank you again. I really appreciate that. Yeah, you all are a wonderful community. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so this idea of protecting the pastor no matter what, protecting the people in power no matter what. And that can look a lot of different ways. Things like, what was I going to say? Oh, this person is a godly person. We all make mistakes. And then also, one thing that I don't like is making you responsible for what that leader did, right? So let's say an abusive leader goes to jail. You blew the whistle on them, you talked about whatever happened to you, and then they'll blame you and say, well, you're the reason the pastor's behind bars now. You put him there. Were you the one that engaged in whatever landed this person in jail? Did you steal money? But that whole idea of taking the responsibility off that abusive leader and putting it on you, very abusive. And it's something that we really have to work through as a spiritual, as spiritual individuals, because the things that I talk about are very subtle. Of course, you think about a situation, and these pastors, they're doing abusive things in institutions. Many of them do good things for people. And so that's why it can be really hard to say, okay, I'm going to blow the whistle on this person or whatever. People have talked about, well, this pastor did this and they gave money to this organization, or they helped this person when they were down and whatnot. So, it's really concerning. And on a quick note here too, I want to write down too, Daly, what you said, because you mentioned a couple of Nigerian YouTubers. I want to look up their channels too, because I had no idea about them. One thing I really like about this channel and all of you is that you're great at sharing resources, and I'm here to learn too. I feel like I'm learning a lot, learning along with you all. So, okay, let me see another comment here. Okay. Forgiveness, it's a sin, they can repent. I got deletion threats after oh my goodness, I tried to expose a pastor. I told you how they came for me, made excuses for him. They make up so many excuses. Yes. And see, another thing about that too, I want to point out with the forgiveness is that abusive institutions, they equate forgiveness with reconciliation. And so what they'll do, and I talked about this in my video about virtue signaling. Basically, virtue signaling is saying, oh, we do this thing, or I believe in this. It's sounding good without actually doing good. So you'll hear things, these cliches. We have to have grace. We have to have forgiveness. God said we should love each other. God is love. Well, what does love mean? Does love mean that we're going to close a blind eye to somebody being harmed, especially a child? Like, if we look at the nature of God and we read about God, God has a special place in his heart for children, right? And he says in the Bible about woe to you that, cause children to stumble. So, people, they'll take these verses and they'll, twist them and things like that. And especially about the forgiveness. One way that these institutions try to silence people is if you bring up any kind of hurt or harm that's happened, well, you didn't forgive that person. You need to forgive and forget. And forgiveness means releasing a debt that's owed. It doesn't mean you forget, right? And it doesn't mean you have to reconcile with that person. And so Exactly. I like that what you said. If they get forgiveness, why are you bullying me? Double standards. Exactly. And so it's this idea that because you forgave this person, you have to be in relationship with them. And that doesn't mean that at all. If you're going to reconcile with someone, they need to show changed behavior. And so I like that, what you said here, that if it's a sin, they can repent. And I'm so sorry that you had threats, especially of that nature, after you expose somebody. It's very concerning. And it makes me sad sometimes that people will go so hard for a leader, but then they won't go hard for you. Oh, wow, another super chat. Thank you. Wow, Dele is, really being very generous today. I really appreciate that. So thank you. Trying to see how I can heart this, but I really appreciate that's another donation here. That's very generous. Do you have anything you want to say, Daily? Because I see super chats. That's great. I really appreciate. But science people will attach a comment there or something or anything they want to ask. So if you do, just let me know. That really warms my heart. Thank you. I really appreciate not only how generous people are on this channel in terms of just donating things, but also just how generous you are with information and sharing resources with each other and just being kind because on some channels and some communities, especially online, people can be very mean and judgmental. And so I want to just continue to build a safe space for people to share their experiences and to be able to feel safe and not judged. And so, this whole issue again of forgiveness, don't let anybody bully you into a relationship or even communication with somebody that has not shown themselves to be safe. You can forgive people from afar. Oh, thank you. Last one says, I love this space and I'm glad that you're here. So thank you. But yes, you can forgive somebody from afar. Forgiving is an internal thing and it's a personal thing, right? You can forgive people after they've passed away, it's a personal thing. And so that's why I really, a red flag for me personally, and I've been in some spaces like this where the minute you bring up something that reflects not favorably about either that environment or whatever, and you say this happened and it hurt, have you forgiven them? That's just what they'll pounce on you with. Have you forgiven them? It sounds like you haven't forgiven them. You can forgive somebody and still be very hurt by what they did. Forgiveness doesn't mean the absence of hurt. It basically means that you are releasing a debt because that person owes you something because they crossed a boundary. You're saying, you know what, I'm not going to hold myself or you hostage to you paying this debt, writing it off. You can still be hurt. Messing with children is off limits. I'll never trust you or be around you again. And that is absolutely your choice to do that. And in fact, in this article, from what I see, this article about, what happened with Daystar, Jonathan was saying that he felt pressure. Okay, so basically he said that, okay, so it says the day after the daughter disclosed the abuse, Susie said she immediately called Joni, who urged Susie not to go to the police, but bring the girl to her. After meeting with Joni, she stopped talking about what happened, said, I don't know what happened here, but she was like a lockbox. So I wonder what the grandma said to her, but that breaks my heart to see that. And then not only that, later on, it says that when Susie, because I guess what ended up happening was, okay, I'm reading here that they, Susie was like, this man, Pete, was in the room with her daughter when she was disrobed. Joni blamed the couple's daughter, saying she was the one who took, disrobed. At this point, Susie began screaming at her mother-in-law, and Joni became adamant. So can you believe that they're blaming a girl who was like probably 5 or 4 years old at the time? A grown man is in that room with a girl in that position and they're blaming the girl. Do you see how like wrong that is? And then anyway, it says here that they took, and this is another thing I want you guys to be very careful of, and this is what I consider abusive behavior. Marcus and Joni gathered Jonathan and Susie with Pete and his wife in Marcus and Joni's bedroom and insisted that they repent to each other and pray. So do you see how they're trying to be controlling here? What if they don't want to see this man face to face? I can only imagine how angry the dad was, and probably is like, I could, maybe he, I don't know what's going through his head, but I can imagine that'd be really difficult to do that. So they said, you have to be in this room, repent to each other and pray. And they didn't want to do that. Okay, I see a comment here from Daly. I genuinely value well-informed perspectives such as yours, which play a crucial role in illuminating exploitation and abuse in any form. Thank you. That is really what I want to do here, is encourage critical thinking and protect people from being exploited, in any form. Exactly. Like you summed that up really well. And I thank you for that comment. So you guys see what they did here. They said you have to meet with this person. And I don't like that, because people have talked about how somebody in power had abused them and then they were forced to meet with that person who had some power over them. And you can't force someone to do something like that. If they don't feel comfortable, then they don't feel comfortable to do that. And then listen to this, guys. It says, Susie insisted their kids sleep in the room next to them instead of upstairs. Joni confronted her saying, look at what you're doing to this family. What about Pete's wife and Pete? What about their feelings? Do you guys see what I'm talking about here? So in this situation, Pete, the person who allegedly did the abuse, and Pete is, goodness, the word escapes me, pseudonym. They're taking this Pete and his family and saying, what about his feelings versus this woman's own granddaughter, right? And I guess Pete is a family member or something. So, and then it's saying basically that Joni claimed that God told her while she was praying that Pete was innocent. You guys know we talk about that on this channel, about how people say God told me, and then sometimes say a bunch of nonsense after that to try and manipulate you into doing what they want, right? So that's a red flag there. And so do you see how when they wanted to protect themselves from that abuse, I see a comment here saying that, someone saying, I'll never trust you or be around you if you mess with kids because they're off limits. That's what Jonathan and Susie were trying to do. And his mom was like, you're breaking up our family. How about this alleged abuser's feelings, right? And so when people try to have boundaries, they're told that you're breaking up our family, whether it's a biological family or spiritual family. Okay, I see a question here. Do you think the whole system is abusive because no one took Jonathan and Susie's side? I can't speak for the whole system. I don't know. But I do know that the behaviors that I talked about and the things that were said were definitely abusive, because Marcus and Joni are in a position of power in that company, and they use their family, this is allegedly, because I'm reading what was in this report here, that they said don't go to outside authority. So think about that. A child was said to her mom that she was harmed, and the grandma said, we're not going to the police. They didn't, according to this article, they didn't go to the police 2 years later, right? And so, because I know that some of you will wonder, well, what if this person was making this up, right? Okay. You still have a duty to go to the authorities and figure this thing out. Their behaviors are saying, we are going to prioritize Pete and the appearance of this network, which is why this Jonathan was pressured to sign an NDA, right? And said, you can't talk about this. If you do, you're out. That's what happened. So they're using their authority here to try and control other people, because that's not right. Even, and sometimes people, will say, well, we'll try to wonder, like, are people saying if somebody comes forth with allegations of abuse, you should just believe them? That's not what I'm saying. It's not about what you believe. It's about how you handle it, right? And so in situations where a child especially is saying they've been harmed, whoever is hearing that, especially if they're a mandated reporter, is under obligation to investigate that. And according to this article that I put here, it wasn't reported until at least 2 years later. I hope that answered your question. Vivian says, yeah, all about the appropriate response. Exactly. Think about it. If the first response is to jump to the defense of the person in power and to protect the appearance of that system, by doing that, you are circumventing and delaying justice. If the person is making this up, then let the police or whoever else figure it out. But you have a duty to report that. And what is so frustrating and can be very difficult for individuals who have been on the other side of this is that they have felt powerless because they brought things up and it's always, let's handle it in house. Let's handle it in house, right? I talked before about a woman, the article is on the Roy's report, whose husband was abusing her kids and her. And the counselor said that, she needed to keep things in house. And one other person, who was giving a speech at this school or whatever was saying that to all you women out here who are abused, that if you go to a shelter that they're run by feminists and the government and they're going to try and break up your marriage, so don't go. This same individual too has said things when a woman had talked about her abuse as a child, told her to examine what role she had in being abused as a child. That's abusive because you can't blame a child for being abused. It's up to the person in power not to harm that child because they're a child. And so in this case, what I just read a while ago about how the girl Joni allegedly told this girl or told the mom that it was her fault for, disrobing, right? So this child was blamed and they were probably, maybe 6 years of age, 4 or 5, 6 years of age at the time. Yes. I mean, it's sad. It makes me sad. It makes me feel very angry because So another question says, what I don't understand is that the grandmother chooses the abuser instead of her granddaughter as if it's no big deal. So all this for the company's reputation. You know what? Yes. And I'm going to point out something else. I think it's the company's reputation. And I also think that there is a pervasive system belief within some of these systems about men and sexuality, right? And what I mean by that is that I did a video a while ago with the woman who wrote the book, The Great Sex Rescue, and her name is Sheila Ray Gregoire. And she talks about the messaging from evangelicals around sex. And basically, it is that, now they're not going to come out and say this, but they make women responsible for men's sexual behavior. So things like if a man is unfaithful to his wife, they'll ask the wife, well, what did you do to cause him to cheat on you? When that man is responsible for his own actions, right? Or saying that if you are not, the word it rhymes with corn, okay? You know what I'm talking about. Nasty things that people watch on screen. If a man is addicted to that, it's because the woman is not providing him with enough physical fulfillment. And I don't know if you all have been in any evangelical systems. Let me know if you have heard that, but it is implied heavily. And so if you read her book, it's not just her book that talks about this. People who have been raised under this will hear this a lot, that, well, these men can't control themselves and it's up to you. It basically takes away people's autonomy. Vivian said yes. And see, this is the thing that I talk about in these abusive environments. The way they strip people of their autonomy is it's wrong. But now with that autonomy stripping is also making you responsible for things that you're not responsible for. So in the situation I talked about where this person, pastor goes to jail and the person is blamed for calling the police on the pastor, it was the pastor that did whatever nasty thing he did that sent him to jail, not you for calling the police. And so in this situation, it's the woman being blamed or the person tempting that person. It's their fault. And so to me, that's why I feel like it's something quite pervasive in evangelical circles. And you'll see this too, you'll see, if you happen to watch Focus on the Family, and you'll see these stories of these couples, a lot of times they'll have couples where the man was unfaithful to the wife, and they will talk about it kind of like, well, it's just a thing that he did, just forgive him and move on. And kind of asking, I've seen some interviews too, where if I remember correctly, it's kind of like the kind of pressure the woman to talk about how it was her fault too. And every person is responsible for their own behavior. In fact, there was a recent study about infidelity that I read about, and it said basically, you want to know why the reason people cheat? Okay, here's the big answer: because they want to. It's not anyone's fault. When they asked people why they did it, they said because they wanted to, right? People are going to do what they want to do. So when you are in a system that blames you for somebody else's behavior, it's pervasive. And so I see that reflected in this sentiment that it was a 5 or 6 year old girl's fault for changing into new clothes. They caused a grown man to not control himself. Do you see how ridiculous that is? But that said, and I see you all in the comment section talking about this. Yeah, blaming the woman, and I don't want to hear any, oh, that's not all churches. I'm not saying it's all churches, but I'm saying that this message is prevalent enough that it gives me concern when women in these situations are shamed for leaving a spouse that was unfaithful to them. And a lot of shame comes on the woman. It's a sin. You can forgive it and move on. Why is there so much of a, you have to move on versus like, what works for you? What about prioritizing a healthy marriage, right? And so, I've heard of so many situations, women have told me how they had been married to somebody who continued to be unfaithful, to continue to watch porn, you know what I'm talking about, and they were pressured to stay with him. They said, well, he makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. Forgive and stay with this person. So do you see how that is an abusive message? Because he's clearly, violating their marriage contract, but people who leave are shamed for doing so. And so that is enough in that culture, and it's written off as, oh, it's just a mistake. No, a mistake is picking up the wrong can of soup at the store, or buying, reduced sodium ranch dressing instead of the regular one. That's a mistake. Being unfaithful to your spouse is a choice, and choices have consequences. So I believe that that's something that's really inherent within evangelical culture, where a lot of, people are just given passes for that kind of stuff. And, oh, they made a mistake, and, and just forget and move on. But there's little requirement for changed behavior, right? What is this person going to do to stop cheating and, watching inappropriate stuff or whatever it is? It doesn't even have to be that. It could be like, illegal substances or gambling or whatever it is. The point is, you are not responsible for someone else's bad choices. Spiritually abusive systems, however, will tell you that you are. And so that's stripping your autonomy too, and the other person's autonomy. It's dehumanizing on all, from every perspective. Let me read some comments here. So what they broke of their family, yeah, exactly. So, Joni's talking about breaking up a family. Well, the person that chose to harm a child, they're the ones that broke up the family. See another comment here: controls, manipulation. I agree with your perspective of the church's view on women. It's implied that woman is responsible for these type of abuses. Yep. Perverse if the woman does it. I wonder about the extent of the hurt throughout an entire congregation. It's scary. Yeah, and also shame the wife if she wants to leave the husband. It happened. It happened. I'm going to tell you where it happened. It happened. I saw this on the Roy's report. It happened in John MacArthur's church. years ago, a woman, I don't remember her name. I think her name might have been, I think it's maybe Eileen Gray, if I remember correctly. But let me see if was her name? I don't remember her name, but it was in John MacArthur's church. And I think her name was Eileen Gray, but it's Eileen Taylor. I'm going to put the report in here, but they let this woman down. The woman her husband did all kinds of just horrible stuff. I'm going to put here in the article. I'm going to put the article there, but she was publicly shamed for divorcing her husband, who had caused harm, the type of harm that I talked about, and also was unfaithful to her. And she was shamed publicly for leaving this man. And, and someone needs to say something about it. It's not fair. But that's what happened. And so, yes, saying, and they'll blame the woman for breaking up the family and say, you broke up the family. What about the person that chose to engage this behavior? And I'm talking about men and women specifically because this example comes up more often. And I have yet to hear, I know that it can also go the other way around, that women can, cheat on their husbands and stuff like that. But I have yet to hear of an example of a man that was told he was breaking up his family because he left his wife who was cheating or had an addiction. It's the woman that, you broke up the family. You're supposed to stay through this. I see this, stand by your man, just sickening. Yeah. And so if you, or accused of not forgiving because you left, you can forgive that person. But if they're not going to change, then what's the point? And everyone is going to do what's right for them. But the point is, I don't like the idea of blaming that party and blaming them and taking your eyes off what the other person is doing to cause that behavior in the first place. So, and it's not just evangelical culture. There are other religious groups and things that have their own hangups and whatever. But to me, Daystar is, it's tied to, evangelical churches. And so it's something that people really need to be aware of. There was, I think Christianity Today also talked about some things. They had a podcast about Mars Hill Church, and they talked a lot about this evangelical industrial complex and what it entails. And it's really interesting to listen to. So, yeah, so wow, it's been almost 2 hours. The time really flies when we all chat and talk, and I really appreciate the likes. If you have not subscribed, please do so. Please like and share. I upload videos to the channel every week, every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's what I do. I'd love to hear from you all in the comments. I'm going to probably wrap up pretty soon. But I'd love to hear from you. Have any questions or comments or any ideas, anything you want to cover lively the next time I go live. Let's see here. Okay, I see so many church women turned on me when I said I would leave. Got turned on for saying that the church has so many issues, most, not all. Of course, isn't it really, it's frustrating too that we have to keep saying most, not all. We would probably have to say that less if more people spoke up about this. So I feel like I'm tired of saying not all. If you're not in that group, then you know who you are. You don't have to be defensive about it, But yeah, I'm really sorry that you went through that. It's unfortunate too that the people that you would expect the most support from, which would be other women, that they turned on you. And it's, I can imagine in your experience is, similar to that I've heard from others, very isolating, and you feel very alone because you didn't do anything wrong, but you're being treated like the outcast and the villain. So, yeah. But let me just also put my website in the comments. And see. Okay. You're very welcome. I really appreciate all of your comments and your feedback. And I just want to, reiterate, if you found this helpful, like, share. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. And that way you can get notifications. If you want to subscribe, not telling you what to do, but if you want to, be great, because then you get updates about when I go live and when I post things like that. So I can understand. Yes, have a great night too. I know that we talked about some heavy things. I can imagine it's probably, might be triggering, upsetting for some of you. So make sure you do some things for self-care this evening. If it is evening where you are. Anybody's gonna do anything fun for self-care this evening? Maybe take a bath, have some tea, take a walk if it's not too cold where you are. Okay, I see something. Moving from one abusive church to another. What are the red flags? Thank you so much. I'm watching from Belgium. Hey, I've always been curious as to where people are watching from. If anyone is outside the United States, let me know. But that's cool. I will. I have a video actually, I think, about red flags. So I will see if I can find that for you real quick. Oh, that's so nice. I see Wendy's says here, I'm glad I am a part of the live. I've been following your channel for a while. I'm so glad. Well, thank you for your support. And I see Angela here saying, thank you so much. Very informative. Oh, okay. Hey, Kemi, how are you? Watching from London, UK. I just joined. We'll try to watch the replay. Okay, that's cool. It's really neat to see people from outside the United States here, because I always wonder, like, where are people watching from and things like that. So that's really neat to see. And take care of yourselves. What will you all be doing for self-care today? Will you have some tea? Watch a show that you like? Because it's really important. I want you guys to take care of yourselves, because this is not easy stuff to talk about. Okay, so Kemi says there's very limited awareness of spiritual abuse in the UK. Well, I hope that, I'm glad that this channel is spreading awareness. I've heard that from, other people in different countries that have reached out to me and said that, yeah, that this is, that it's not something that people really know about or even know what it is. So, yeah. Let's see. So it's it's not an easy thing to talk about. It's not an easy thing to experience. So I hear where you're coming from. And let me see. I think I have. Okay, so I have a video. Somebody had asked me about red flags. Okay, and I'm copying the link, and I have one red flag video. I didn't cover all of them, but I talk about one thing in particular that is a red flag. So I'm going to post it here in the chat. Okay. And okay, I see some things here. Have a great night. Cleaning, watching Netflix, resting. Yes. Make sure you get your rest. I talk about how spiritual abuse affects our bodies, and if you have been through this, make sure you are getting your rest, because it can keep you up at night. It can affect your body in so many ways. And so if you don't do anything tonight, make yourself a nice hot cup of tea. If you like tea, put on cozy socks, take a hot bath, go to bed early if you can. Okay, so I'm just going to chill here in Northeast Florida. Okay, how's the weather there? The weather in Florida is really nice this time of the year. So, relaxing, drinking hot cocoa. Okay, good. That's cool. I love hot chocolate, so that'll be good. Good. Any other fun things anybody will be doing for self-care? Do you have a favorite brand of hot cocoa? I kind of am picky about the ones I like, but so I'm glad you'll be getting your resting. Put on some, something that you like to watch, maybe some music that you like, that you find relaxing, and do some of that, and just, take good care of yourself. And again, I have other videos too that you can watch, that talk more about this. So I know someone had asked about a red flags video, and I'm trying to see who left that comment, but I hope if you left that comment that you see the video. Oh, thank you. Oh my goodness. That's so kind of you. Thank you, New Biology. Another super chat. You all are so very generous. I'm trying to figure out like how to heart your comment here, New Biology. I think, were one of the first people that were on my my live streams, because there was a while where I was going live more often, and then things have gotten pretty busy, so I haven't had as much time to do that. But thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Okay, I see it's in Northeast Florida. It's a little chilly, but nice. Yeah. Someone else says thank you for the video. Thank you, New Biology. I also really appreciate your comments too. You always have really cool things to say. So yeah, this is really, really helpful. And I just really, like I said, I really appreciate how all of you, support one another. And I want this place to be a place where people can feel safe in terms of talking about spiritual abuse. One thing that's hard out here is that a lot of people don't know, don't really understand a lot about spiritual abuse. So they'll say, oh, well, that's just church hurt, or no church is perfect, or, we can't, I don't know, whatever things people say, we can't, no one's perfect, and I understand where people are coming from, but sometimes it can be very dismissive when people hear that. And so a lot of times people they feel like they don't have a place where they can talk freely about what happened without being shamed for their experiences. Right. And so I want this to be a place where people, feel good. It feels safe anyway, way to, to share what's going on, and aren't given like what's the word I'm looking for, like spiritual cliches, like, oh, we have to forgive everyone, or oh, it's, we should be nice and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about. I'm sure that you guys know, having been through things and hearing what people say. I don't want you to feel dismissed. Okay, I see a comment here. I didn't know you did lives. Glad I made it. I'm glad you made it too. Yeah, so thank you all so much. And okay, I also see another comment here. I'm doing EMDR currently. It's help with the spiritual abuse I experienced tremendously. I'm working on slowly re-entering spiritual environments, but taking it slowly. Yes, that's good. It's good to take it slowly. This is not something you want to rush. So no one should ever make you feel ashamed for taking things slowly. For some people, it means they'll watch online for a little bit. I always recommend watching online if you can before you go anywhere. But watch online, take your time. Don't let anybody rush you or make you feel ashamed for being wise. And remember, people also need to not only earn your trust, but maintain it. Nobody is entitled to your trust either. Okay, so I'm glad that EMDR is working for you. I think that's great. Yeah, you all are such a generous community, and everything. And so I hope you have a good weekend. And for those of you who are in the States who will be celebrating Thanksgiving soon, I hope that it is a good time for you all. I know that people may be around family, and maybe, it may not be the best experience, but, just do the best you can, and make sure you take time for yourself. So, all right. It's been wonderful talking with all of you. This has been great. I'm really glad that I did this, and just also appreciate your support too. This is the first time I've ever talked about a current event, and I wanted to do it in a way that, that was informative and that helped us learn. So I'm really glad that I did it, and I really appreciate all of your support, and I look forward to seeing you all at the next live or next video. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.